Brian, unveil your knowledge.
Cool. Thank you, guys. So this game's only like 10 minutes long, so I'm just gonna play it for you guys, and then we can talk about it if you're interested at that point. And I think that's about it. I'm just pressing the arrow keys here. It's really not much complication. I'm in charge of that, by the way. game. Yeah. This is a game made for a class by myself and Katie Pistolsky, another designer. Our composer, Bill Piatut, did a great job, and we had a couple consultants join us to make sure that we were able to keep everything on track. Okay. It was an experiment that we wanted to do over the course of a semester in interactive comedy. I think you guys saw most of it, but just simple controls and letting people have a good universe to play around in, I guess. So, and general silliness throughout any opportunity that we could have. All of these are true facts, by the way. This was probably one of the more difficult aspects of the project, was having the legal rights to using stock photography for everything that we did. Let me tell you, there's some great search engines, but it's still a bunch of work. You would think not having an artist brought in would be an easier option. But finding pictures of bears that look like they're dancing can be a little challenging. You would be surprised how difficult it is to get some logos in black and white and be legally allowed to use them too. So yeah, that's our game. So, thank you guys. I don't have much of a plan after that moment for the rest of the speaking period that I have here. I have a couple slides about the background of it, and I went through about 100 different games trying to see what else there is in the comedy of interactive games space that I can kind of point you guys to. I guess I'll pull that up. I think these are interesting reference points. Oh, there's no present mode. Well, you're just going to see all my notes then. So yeah, this is me. I'm Brian Handy. I'm a grad student in my final year at USC right now in the Interactive Media and Games program. You would most recently have heard of me otherwise for participating in the Half-Life 3 or Epistle 3 game jam, where my attempts ended up in a strange space, addressing time travel and things like that. I love doing game jams and trying new weird stuff. You can also always come bug me about, depending on the speed of my computer, videogrammetry, the idea of like how do you capture with depth cameras scenes like what holograms would need. I think this stuff is fascinating too. But otherwise, I'll just work on things like Disco Bear and make a bunch of weird indie stuff. I've been doing it for a longer period of time than I probably should have. Come ask me about my first game when I was 12 in an early version of Game Maker sometime. I think it was 3 or 4. And you will say, wow, you've made some progress, Brian. But this game came out of wanting to really go after this comedy space out of a bunch of great stuff was being done in it. Katie and I saw what Octodad and Quap and Surgeon Simulator and Bennett Foddy's very sexy hiking game getting over it, as well as like a whole bunch of other things that were out in this space too. I recently learned that Undertale is not just an Earthbound game, but like after finally sitting down and playing it, has a bunch of comedic elements to the interactivity of it. It's fascinating. I think WarioWare is a really good one to be looking at too, which is kind of weird. But we settled on, all right, awkward physics has been established as a genre already. What else can we do to find more spaces in this area? And Katie made a prototype where you just, because we talked about Colin's Bear, the YouTube short. Have you guys all seen this? I'm gonna.
Oh yes. I think you should play it, though.
I think I should play it right now. I think I should connect to the oh, I don't have internet set up. Wow, it's amazing that I got this far into the presentation before realizing that. So I guess homework assignment, go look at Colin's Bear. Um, by far the most famous 10-second 3D animation.
The Wi-Fi works okay. You might be able to grab it.
Let me try. This one?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see.
It's going to pop up a green button. It's going to do the thing, and then you should be good to go.
Can you guys tell that I just got here? So the most important YouTube animation you may ever see. Anticipation. Oh, come on. So that's the basis of our 4-month-long project. There's many, many good other videos in that genre, but Colin's Bear was the initial. That came out of a student that was disgruntled with a 3D animation class he was in, where the professor taught him absolutely nothing, he claims. So that was his final project. Stark defiance of everything and channeling of energy and appreciation of Earthbound, I guess, too. Did not expect to reference that game twice in this talk at all. But we really liked that style of comedy. Katie and I have a similar taste in terms of comedy, and we knew that going into the project, and we said, okay, that's something interesting. So we tried prototyping a bunch of stuff. There are many comedy situations where it is not fun to be the one person in a movie that everybody is laughing at. That's something we learned, whether it's a hectic, frustrating situation or slapstick or high anxiety. We had prototypes of walking across tightropes and people just got stressed out, or having to move peas very quickly between 2 different bowls. And it was just, it makes you anxious. It's probably very funny to watch, but we really wanted the player to be able to be enjoying the interactions in a comedic way as well. And Katie made a prototype that after we said, oh, Colin's Bear is good, and she said, I'll try making a prototype based on that. That opening shot of Disco Bear has remained unchanged since, where a spotlight comes on and you find out after someone has told you the controls, oh, cool, I'm a dancing bear for the next 5 minutes. That's fine. That's great. And that prototype ended after 15 seconds maybe, and the biggest reaction that we had was, why doesn't it keep going? So we added a whole story to it and everything. I'll get into that in a second, but this was the only other game that I could remember that really went after a similar genre of just like giving you a simple set of controls and giving a bunch of ridiculous responses. Have you guys seen Super Press Space to Win action RPG before? This came out about the time that Resident Evil 4 first arrived in the games industry, and it was a critique of quick time events. Because it was considered so ridiculous amongst the gamer community at that time that all of a sudden you could just press some buttons and magically you'd do these incredible things that you required almost no skill in order to accomplish. So Super Press Space to Win action RPG is a 15-minute long game, I won't play it here, where you have one button as input, and like the context button in Zelda, it will change for whatever the situation is as you play through this straight linear game that will wait on your every move and just keep giving you more and more ridiculous responses to your one job of hitting space when the text stops appearing on screen. But we looked at that and we said, cool, we could probably build this out into something further. So Disco Bear mechanically is an exploration of that. Thematically, it comes more out of things like the Butters tap dancing episode of South Park, and these dramatic heightenings in comedy, or most of season 3 of SpongeBob. So if you already consider yourself a fan of either of those two things, there's a good chance there's some overlap. Katie and I both are definitely in that category. So you put them all together, and you end up with Disco Bear. And that's it for my slides. And I'll keep using this joke until people think it's overused. It might already be overused, even just using it once. But yeah, if you guys want, I can go through my 100 different reference points of games. I think I already covered a bunch of them in this slide. Let's see if there's any that I forgot. Stanley Parable, Job Simulator. Let's see. Oh, there's this fascinating stuff also of just like what is interactivity that lets you have a comedic experience that's not necessarily games. And one that I was surprised by was going into a hat shop at Disneyland. Costumes are a big one. If you've ever seen somebody that you never see wear something ridiculous come in wearing something ridiculous, that's a big one. And the liquefy tool in Photoshop can be used to great effect in this form, especially with middle schoolers. Summer camps, lots of learned knowledge there. So yeah, I think that's it. Oh, and if you guys haven't played Burn the Rope also, that's a good reference point on all this. So I guess I'll open it up. Do you guys have questions for me?
Oh, I want to ask one question before Randy, just to spite him. Was there stuff that you guys sort of had talked about going into Disco Bear, and you're like, this is perfect Disco Bear material, and then you got it in, you're like, this is terrible.
Ooh.
This won't fly here.
The biggest controversial point was, do we measure how people are dancing or not? And ultimately, it ended up being more of a distraction than anything. Like, we really wanted to make the interactions feel rewarding, and so it was kind of where do we fall on the spectrum in terms of that. So you may have noticed that the stars are firing at certain points in the initial scene, and that's when you have actually hit the keys on beat. But it's a very vague interpretation. Mostly, I think now if you just spam, it will bring in all the other characters. So you can play it hands off, and none of the other characters will show up, but the game will keep progressing. But we decided against making it a music game in that sense. So comedy first.
All right, any other questions?
There's this 80s movie, I think it's Better Off Dead, and there's this guy who's really good at skiing, but then there's a tragedy, so he stops skiing and he like kind of becomes a hermit, and then he has to like come back and ski to save the mountain because it's been threatened by these like loan sharks.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen that movie?
No, I have not. I've never seen this movie, but I've seen a good number of 80s movies that are not too far off.
Have you ever seen Dirty Dancing?
Yes, I have seen Dirty Dancing.
That's Patrick Swayze in it.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Is this a request for Patrick?
Great question, Randy. Great question. Are there any other questions for Brandon or Brian? Where did polar bear come from? Was this a question of sheer mass?
I'm not. I think.
Stock photo availability?
Yeah, so initially, you start with prototypes and all the assets are illegal. And the best dancing bear photos out there, here, I'll show. I think it's like the top result. Maybe this is too risky a search. Here, this guy right here. So our initial prototype was this individual bear who made a significant number of dance poses all in one day. And I don't know where the Alaskan photographer who found this bear came up with him, but it's just a gold mine. And we looked into this, and $5,000 a photo is not really our price range, I think. Maybe if Disco Bear got a huge publisher and we wanted to continue with the project. But that was where it started, was just that the best looking dancing bear out there in the world that has ever been documented, as far as we know, was a polar bear. So we just stuck with that.
In honor of this bear.
Yeah, and the fur catches the lighting of a dance floor pretty well when you got everything going.
And my other question was, Collins Bear being 3D, the prototypes here started 2D, despite the sort of existential horror of tracking down all of these Creative Commons URLs and attribution rules. Was there a point where you guys were like, this is going to be terrible, let's just do a terrible 3D bear and stick him in the thing?
Yeah, we definitely had a point where we said, this is probably going to be a lot of work if we go the legal route on this. And we said, all right, well, as long as we're careful about it from the beginning. And so we just stuck a text file in, and every new asset that we added to the project, and most of which we used, we'd copy over the URLs in addition and try to remember to write down what the license was for each of those photos. That credits list is the culled down version. That's probably a quarter of what the actual list was, and that's our like best guess of what actually got in or not as far as we're remembering. Like, there's a good chance that we missed something, but we still have it there, and like if somebody sent us a letter, we'd very quickly change that. But yeah, we kind of said, you know, we want to keep the team small for this project. We really want to be focused because it'll just let us move faster on all of this. And we said this might be easier. I can't confirm that anymore, but it was totally doable, and that surprised me. So maybe we'll reach out to Pixabay or one of the other many. There's like 20 different search engines for Creative Commons images, in addition to like Google right here in the tools has a usage rights drop down, so you can actually change it to just anything, and you'll see all the bear photos that were so great are now gone. Now it's, you know, whatever else you have to work with. And it looks like none of these bears are dancing.
That one's not even a bear.
Yes, trucks. Yeah, I don't know. So
It's a bear in the truck, maybe.
Pixabay was the one that we turned to the most, and it just ended up being a lot of search results for polar bears, as well as some Photoshop tweaks to make the fur look like it was actually pretty similar. The bear rug move, the dance move where you're dead, taxidermied on the floor, that's a brown bear. You can't tell very easily. You can tell that the coloration is slightly wrong, but if you look up polar bear dancing here, then it's going to give you... you can see this one made it into our project, but not into the final game. Yeah, but not much for image results. So this is how we suffered on this project.
Two more questions. These not from me, but from another organizer here. Why season 3 of SpongeBob specifically?
The first 3 seasons I have had recommended to me repeatedly by some friends in the comedy space and writers and things like that. So I went and watched through all those, and I would agree with them. I've heard in general that the writers change after that point, so I haven't ventured too much further down that route. But given that group was also, you know, sometimes a target audience, then that's an easy reference point in terms of what were we looking for with this. So, yeah.
Awesome. And the other question was, can you play through the portion of Half-Life 3 that you were so fortunate to get to direct?
I am not able to play through it because when you have 200 characters on screen in Unity in 3D that are fully rigged, firing bullets at each other, a 2012 MacBook Pro is not quite what it used to be anymore. I do have video footage of it, but I don't know. Let's see. Do you guys want to see all the videos that I have on YouTube? Oh, man. Let's see if there's anything embarrassing or strange. You can instead just judge my taste in music to study to. Or, let's see. I'm not going to bring you through all my favorites. It's not a good idea. I'm also not going to be showing you the closing of Miiverse, but that's a fascinating thing if you guys ever look into it. They decided to remove all the moderators for the final 3 or 4 hours. So it's Nintendo's doodling network, except totally unmoderated. Yeah. I think those are the most not safe for work tweets I've ever made before. And I made it all sensitive content, but I'm still wondering if that'll ever cost me any opportunities with Nintendo in the future. But man, those artists. So I wanted to play with the Borealis scene where you're on a time-traveling ship, but it starts getting distorted and weird. So I kind of based this off of old code from another game that I'm making that's about time travel. where it's using networking code like Braid does in order to track all the positions of everything and the rotations and actions and play them back for you. It's really weird being in a fight with enemies and the past of the enemies, but then also having your past coming in to fight the past of the enemies, but it can also like shoot at the present enemies if they happen to be in the line of fire. There ended up being a lot of problems where enemies would run up and shoot at something, and then immediately a second later their copy runs up and shoots at something, but the first one hasn't moved yet, and so they shoot their future selves. And so I had to turn off all the collision for shooting for... Yeah, this is why it won't run on my MacBook. I had to turn off all the friendly fire in order for it to even be playable. The buzzing sound is the sound of an individual enemy Combine soldier dying. They have like alert sound play, and so it's just this hum of like hundreds of them all having just died. Yeah, so that's the game. I did that in 5 days very irresponsibly, and then people thought it was cool, and so I felt like it wasn't irresponsible anymore. It is still irresponsible. Yeah. Yeah, time travel is a fascinating concept in games to me. It was kind of a surprise to me that Disco Bear didn't go after that as well. So who knows, maybe Disco Bear 2, networking, programming. We'll see.
Does anybody have any other questions for Brian? Yeah. Oh, here we go.
As far as like picking the different images for Disco Bear and the other animals, were you trying to go for, you know, continuity between the different animals, or were you just trying to pick whatever worked?
So initially we just wanted to have a group of friend animals that was something interesting and diverse so we could make puns about them. And then we decided, oh, you know, we shouldn't really reinvent this anymore. I think the following chapters having more characters in them, we kind of went with the easiest and fastest approach first. It was like, where can we reuse assets? Where can we not invent work for ourselves? Since the class this was for was all about production deadlines, which is why this is not a Game Jam game, but a finished game. Yeah, other than that, there weren't too many design choices that we made for it, other than following this parody plot structure and then just finding something to fill that role. I think for the other bear characters, or at least the lady bear that comes in the first scene, we wanted to go with the fastest way to be able to do that duet dancing that there was, and also happening to run into the two polar bears that are fighting, looking like they were dancing in a couple different shots, so that we could turn that into the spinning scene. So that's the secret, they're fighting.
Any other questions? Brian, thank you so much for bringing us Disco Bear.
Thank you, guys.
Are there like websites where people should go to find out about Disco Bear 2?
Yeah, by the way,
which was officially announced just now and is real.
Disco Bear, we don't think we can make any money off of this thing directly, so it's just free, and we wanted it to be as easy as possible for people to share. So that's it. Now it's playing in front of you. It's at discobeargame.com, and it's a browser game. The only limit is you need a keyboard to play it. So desktop, not mobile. But that's it.
Thank you so much.